So basically, when you've harvested your crop, so to speak, we've got some radishes here, but the same applies with tomatoes and almost anything that you can get out of the garden. I think there's 4, maybe 5 ways to preserve, so to speak. There's dehydrating, which is taking all the water out of the plant. So for instance, we've got herbs up here. You'll just put them in a low temperatured oven with a spoon in the door so that it lets the moisture out. And then eventually, it will dry and it's preserved. Another one is oil, so olive oil, sunflower oils. Going back to what we were saying about the nutrient side of things though, olive oils and cold pressed oils will be better. There's salt, which can either be used as just salt, or you make a brine with hot water and salt solution. Or there's acid, such as a vinegar or a lemon. There's so many different types of vinegars, so you can name them all, but as long as it's acidic, it's going to kill off any bacteria that is in there. So this definitely isn't the environment that you want to be preserving in, because there's mud everywhere, and so you want to sterilise your jars first. So either use boiling water and kind of shake it and just to give it a good clean. But what we do is we put them in the oven at about 100. You do the same, don't you? Oh, someone said earlier they do the same.
Boil in the water as well.
Oh, okay. But yeah, we put the jars in the oven for about 100 degrees for 10-15 minutes, and then just leave them to cool, and that's going to kill off any bacteria again.
And so that's the rubber in it, and it's not going to
take the rubber off.
Okay.
I tend to use these jars first more than anything, because they've got a pop thing on the top, so you know when it's been sealed.
Yeah.
And also there's the rubber, and so I just find these
so you
little.
put it in with the lid. You put the lid in the oven. On the jar.
Not on the jar, separately.
Yeah.
So place the lid down like that,
Okay.
and the jar, and then just leave them to cool down.
So I would presume that's like plastic inside that, and it's to make the popping thing.
Some of them are, again, and if you put it too hot, then it will burn that. So you want it just again, it's trial and error, but just under 100 degrees kind of seems
And the boiling
right.
water does the same thing, does it?
Yeah, effectively. So when you've got your sterilised jar, so to speak, again, it all depends on your produce, really. This one, for example, we're using radish, and we've got some edible flowers there just to make them look a bit prettier and nicer. So you basically fill that up with your ingredients. Yeah, they're really nice. These especially is porridge, but if you take off the little green stem, they're lovely.
Wonderful.
Yeah, try away. So basically you're filling your jar with your ingredients. Like here, for example, is just pureed tomato, and you just chuck it in there, as long as it's got some sugar or salt or something to preserve it.
It's quite sweet.
Nice, aren't they?
Shifty. I never expected that, if I'm honest.
Nice, aren't they?
Yeah.
Have you tried one?
Does it taste like a flower?
No, it tastes like a sweet, I think. They're really nice. I'm always just walking around picking little flowers and
eating flowers as well.
Yeah. It's even nicer when the strawberries are out. But
You eat the brown thing
These
as well?
yeah, just take the little green bit off.
If you pull these out as well, you can
Yeah,
get
yeah.
out, isn't it? That's what the bees go
Chive
for.
seeds, aren't they?
It's very sweet, isn't it?
The same as these. These are a bit oniony.
What is that called? Porridge?
Yeah, these are porridge, blue and white.
What do you do? Just eat this?
What's that? Chive. Yeah, maybe break it up. Well, you can eat the whole one, but it might be a bit oniony. So, but go on, crack on.
So, is that ready to eat,
Yeah.
so to speak, now?
Yeah, you can put them in salads and.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it's quite strong.
So that is
but-
chives, is it?
Yeah, it's a flower. So once the chives have kind of done their thing, they'll go to flower, and these will then turn into the seeds. So when the flower dies, it will leave the seeds behind, and then you obviously keep the seeds and replant them more.
So what's that? The white one?
They're going...
Borage.
Where are you going?
It's not many people. I'd never heard of it, but I'd.
Does that grow wild then, or does it grow?
It can do, but we got it from seeds basically. But we started growing it as a pollinator rather than to collect the flowers, so it attract the bees to help pollinate the tomatoes and things like that.
So, without being silly, you could pick any of these flowers in here and eat them.
Not
Is it
all
trial
of
and
them.
error?
It is trial and error, and some it's like parsnips, for example. Although it's not the flowers. No. Although it's not the flowers, so it's a different thing. But parsnip tops are poisonous, really. But the
Right.
roots is obviously what we eat. So you've got to be careful of what flowers you can and what you can't. So yeah, I wouldn't go around just picking flowers off everything and
Yeah, just
trying
when you
them.
said you were going around picking flowers and eating them, and I'm thinking, so can you eat anything?
No. Well, it's debatable, but I wouldn't advise it. Let's
So if
put
you
it
ate
that
a
way.
flower from a parsnip, would it kill you or would it just make you ill?
I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you.
That's something
But
to try.
no, but yeah, it is one of those things where it's just a case of
So like these, you could eat these, could you? I don't know what they are, but
that's a lettuce of some sort, but I'm not sure. I've kind of just done research on bits that are edible and which aren't. So again, that kind of comes with the foraging side of things. But yeah, I wouldn't like to say you can go and try every flower because you probably can't. But yeah, these ones are a good start, and the sturgeons as well are really good. They're edible. If anyone's heard of them.
what are they?
Nasturtiums. They're quite popular in country gardens and things like that. But there are quite a few. You'd be surprised. Pansies are edible as well. Yeah, it's just worth having a look up and seeing
never
what.
really thought about eating flowers, but I suppose-
No, that's quite intrigued me, to be fair.
Yeah. No, and courgette flowers are very popular as well. The courgettes are basically grown from a flower, and most people will chop off the flower just to sell the flowers. So it's it's kind of an up and coming market, so to speak.
Would be
But
similar to pumpkin flowers, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
It's yellow.
yeah, pretty much. And really good deep fried apparently, or battered. Hello, what are you doing?
Close it, please.
So yeah, it's either an oil, a salt, an acid, or dehydrating. So when you put your ingredients in there, I've tried it with full vinegar before and it's not too great. So I tend to put a third in and then fill the rest up with hot water. And then I tend to rub around the seal here, and again you've got to make sure there's no damage and things like that, because that's just going to breed bacteria and stuff. So this isn't the best one to use. But yeah, you get vinegar and wipe around the inside and wipe around the top of the lid, and then you seal it. And then to get the proper seal, so that the thing goes in, you put it in boiling water for maybe half an hour. Again, depends on the size of the jar. The idea is to get everything inside boiling, so
Yeah.
that when it cools down, it compresses the jar back in, and then that will last you, I don't know, these were done the middle of last year, and that will still be absolutely fine as a pasta sauce. That's a soup that, again, would be absolutely fine, I think.
Yeah.
If you don't boil them, they'll probably last you a couple of weeks or something like that. But yeah, as soon as you compress the air out of it, it's going to last you that year, maybe 2, maybe 3 years longer. So I haven't gone past the 3-year point, if you get what I mean. All that stuff's back in Bulgaria. So
Do you put that in boiling water and then when it's hot you put the lid on so that when it cools?
no, you put the lid on first. So you put the lid on and then put it in the boiling water, and then you're basically boiling the jar. You're not really boiling anything. So that would basically go in your pot to boil.
Yeah, it sort of don't run
How do you
logic
mean?
to me, because it's going to expand in the jars. And then
Yeah.
it's going to.
I guess it's letting. I guess the expansion's pushing the air out, and then when it cools down, it's.
Yeah, it must push it
contracts it.
out. Yeah, and then when it seals, it stops the air getting back in.
Yeah, I'm guessing
Yeah.
so. But yeah, the one thing you do have to be cautious of is in the pan you need something underneath it so it's not a direct heat on the bottom, because otherwise you end up with popped jars everywhere and it gets messy and dangerous. And so yeah, you want something on the bottom of the pan. I use a plate at times, so it just takes it off the bottom, and then kind of rest them around, boil them for an hour or so, take them out, leave them on the side, and then you'll be in the other room and you'll hear all this and that's all the things going down.
Just
so
a big saucepan then.
yeah, effectively. And I'm not sure whether you should cover the jars or whether you should have the seals kind of underneath. I'm not sure. I don't know whether it makes a difference or whether it doesn't. So
Is that the same process for that sort of jar?
yeah, pretty much. The only reason I use these is because with the Kilner jars you can't really see how well it's been compressed. There's no indication to say, right, okay, well there's no air in there. You kind of just got to trust the fact that you've done the job and hope that it's but again, they should be quite well sealed. So
you would boil those ones as well, those kind of jars too.
yeah, but we were saying about the rubber seals, so when you're putting them in the oven, obviously you'd clean the rubber seals, you wouldn't heat the rubber seals. But yeah, and again, it's all dependent on the jar size as to how long you're going to boil it for and how. But yeah, it's all about experimenting really. Once you've got those basics of it's either an oil, salt, dehydrated, or an acid, it's just about experimenting with what food you like and what combinations you want to deal with really. And again, as long as you boil the jar, it's going to last you so much longer. And I'd much rather have this than Dolmio in the cupboard, if you get what I mean. So, and last year I don't know, you just end up with like 20, 30, 40 jars of this. There's so much that you don't even know what to do with. You're trying to give it away. So for a prepping side of things,
so is that just literally just tomatoes basically?
With a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, more seasoning side of things than anything. But yeah,
Is that just something you experimented with, or you had a recipe? Or
I tend to just chuck everything in. I don't really follow recipes really. I might follow a guideline, but everything I kind of cook is unique. It never has the same thing. I don't like recipes. But no, it's literally a case of all the tomatoes chucked in, simmered
every
down.
batch tastes different.
Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But and then when it comes to chutneys and things like that, you're going to want to kind of boil it all down in your pot, and then you just kind of spoon it in, and then same thing, you just boil the jar and it's there, they're ready. But again, once you've got those principles there, it's just a case of whatever's coming out of the garden, you think, right, how am I going to preserve this, and what can I preserve it with, and then it's all there for when you want it really. Again, there's the odd disappointment now and then. You realise that your jar wasn't clean enough or something, so you open it up and you're like, ooh, it's not great. But
so you can't see like the mould or anything from the outside of the jar, like if it's gone wrong sort of thing.
You can usually. You'll get a good idea. It's like if you kind of see at the top there, you can see that there's no like hair or anything growing on it, but until you actually open it, you don't know. But still smells fine, still looks fine. So
how long has that been in Netherlands?
Early last year, so at least a year you're kind of getting out of this stuff. And if you're growing yearly, then obviously you're consuming what you had last year and you're just keeping it replenished. So now you want to use that obviously because you've just popped it. And whether you could reboil it and reseal it, I don't know. Never tried. So
That's your lunch for tomorrow then.
pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
So when you've air dried, how long will that last?
Again, depending how you store it. If moisture gets back on it, then
Starts to deteriorate.
Yeah. So if you're keeping it in a cool, dry place, then it should last.
Forever.
It should last forever. In theory. But again, it depends on the environment that it's in, really. But yeah, again, these have been here since last year, and there's no rot or mould or anything. They can just be danged in with your roast potatoes, and So again, don't really have to
So
buy
what
herbs.
is that?
That's thyme, that's rosemary. And again, it's one of those things where come the end of the year, it's either going to die and all the leaves are going to go anyway, or you chop it, dry it, and then let it grow again next year, and it's only benefiting the plant as well, because you're pruning it at the same time, so it's going to give off more fruit or flowers next year. So it all kind of interlinks, really. The more you preserve, the more produce you're going to have, and the more produce you have in your garden, the more you're going to need to preserve. And but yeah, I don't know, it all is just about getting stuck in, experimenting and going wrong a few times to make sure that you don't do that thing again. But
trial and error sort of thing.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, they're pretty much the principles. So if anyone wants to dig in, put some flowers in and take some stuff home, you're more than welcome. I'll go and get some hot water or something that does work.
Yeah. Do you want to take one of those jobs, or do you want to sort of go?
I'm not going to pickle, just purely for the fact that I don't like radishes.
Okay.
And I'll just be taking them for the sake of it.
Pickling something.
It's got funny lids.
Is this some sort of what's that?
So I can just dip a can in there. Sorry.
What is that?
What's that?
They're mixed radish.
All types of radish, are they?
Yeah. Again, effectively, you want to make sure they're properly washed and things like that.
Yeah.
But again,
It's just
preservative.
give it a go, yeah. So
Well,
I just brought them in there.
Yeah. The preservative should again stop any of that bacteria.
Yeah.
But the
Bits of
conditions.
onions, I think.
No, that's still radish. They're all different. That's an icicle radish. So
Interesting.
try and should have one somewhere. They're quite long.
Yeah.
But fill it up if you want to fill it up. These are only going to go to waste. So, or actually, maybe tomorrow, put them out to the group.
Radishes, yeah.
So what are those microgreens? I've ordered some of those, but those
I'll show you them in a sec.
Yeah. These flowers can do.
Yeah. crack on. I'll go and get them now. Actually.
Wine vinegar, distilled vinegar, cider vinegar, they're all pickling vinegars.
I think
aren't
all of them. Yeah,
Microgreens.
that's more.
So they're
Well, should
similar, yeah. but
I just pour the
it's-
vinegar over it then, Lewis?
Yeah, I'd go up to about the third roughly.
About a third. Okay. Let's try it.
If you put too much in, would that just overpower it?
Yeah, it's more of a taste thing, to be honest. Again, if you really like vinegar, then
I don't know, the blue
Doesn't
flower
make
looks
a
very similar to the white
a
flower.
huge
It's the
difference, but
blue
it is,
version.
for me, it's just too bitter,
And then
so it
that
needs
one.
watering down a bit.
Is that about the right level?
Yeah, I'd say so. Again, going on what we're saying, it doesn't, depends how vinegary you like it, really.
A bit more.
Still got
And then,
that
yeah,
chive
just-
taste.
Just that.
Still got that chive taste.
Have you? And then
So
just
these
top
are
it
the
up with,
those are the microgreens.
yeah. And then, yeah, just top it up with hot water. Do you like the flowers? They're nice, aren't they?
Does the blue one taste like that?
Is it not?
Okay. So like a blueberry.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I'll get some tissue in 1 second. But yeah, you want to wipe around the rim of each of those with the vinegar. Sorry, darling. Ooh, sorry.
Pickled egg, you do the same, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
The vinegar.
So, wiping round them both, is that creating a seal?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is that the
anything,
only reason you're doing that?
yeah, because between there we go.
Thank you.
Between the lid and the jar is where the air kind of circulates. If there's any dirt there, then that's where the bacteria is going to actually form.
So wipe around here like this.
Yeah, and on the outside as well. So it should be sterilised already, but that's just like making sure, basically.
Yeah. I did boil. I did dip the lids in boiling water before I brought the before I brought them. I don't know if that.
Right.
That was just going by what the instructions were on the chart. Really.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no. Again, the cleaner you can be, the better.
Yeah.
Really. Because the last thing you do want is to be in that survival position where you take off all the lids and then it's all rotten food. Like,
Yeah.
So the cleaner you can be, the better it's
There's the
going
things
to be,
you put in
really.
the pot.
Put the lid on.
And then it's literally a case of when you get home, chuck that in the pot or something like that. If basically it will keep like that for about a week, maybe a week and a half.
Yeah.
But if you want it to last a year, maybe two, then
I
you've got
might
to
try
boil
it.
it. And
So I should just
But
stick it in a saucepan of hot boiling water and boil
Yeah.
it for about half an hour.
yeah, just put something on the bottom to make sure that
Yeah.
it's not direct.
Okay.
So
I'll give it a
that's
try.
heat.
I'll give it a go. Yeah.
So,
But let me know how you get on. It's,
what's the, obviously this is to preserve it for future.
yeah.
If you was pickling, i.e. onions and that, you just use the vinegar and is it mixed spice you use?
Yeah, there's so
Pickles,
many
right?
recipes, but to make the pickles and the chutneys, they'll chuck them all in one pot and they'll cook it all in. And
You cook the onion before you pickle them.
again, it all depends on. To make pickled onions, you mean? Not,
Yeah.
No, I think a lot of people use them.
Yeah, I'm sure my dad used to just do them raw.
Yeah, I think so. And they use a special pickling onion as well. They only grow to a certain
It's
size.
shallot, isn't it?
I'm not
Is it
sure.
shallot?
I don't think it's a shallot. I think they actually call them silver skin onions. I think. I'm
sure
not
my
sure.
dad used to
They're more
pickle his
rounded.
shallots.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I might
I-
be wrong.
you
I
can
might be
pickle
wrong, I was
shallots, you
very young
definitely
at the
can.
time.
But it's one of those things where it's endless. You can pickle anything, and again, going with your tomato sauces, you start getting creative. You can add your basil in there. You can just make any.
So pickling,
Anything,
realistically, is another way of preserving.
Yeah, effectively, you're just adding the preservatives into the pot while you're cooking it, and then you're taking that and just putting it in the jar, and then you boil the jar the same as you would normally. So the recipe is more cooking the pickles rather than just filling the jar and putting stuff on top. That would require putting it into a recipe and cooking it all, and then spooning it into your
I
jar.
appreciate that. I just sort of feel
But yeah,
that.
that's
And all the nutrients would be still perfectly preserved in that food.
I believe so, yeah, effectively. And I guess any loss in nutrients would then be in the vinegar rather than just lost. Because,
So you could drink the vinegar as well.
well, yeah, well, I use it as dressings and things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So mix it with some oil and you've got a salad dressing.
yeah.
Or you use it for your next pickling round, so
Yeah.
to speak. So,
Reuse it.
yeah.
Oh, cool.
But as for the microgreens,
Oh, yeah.
these are the microgreens. Basically, it's just like, yeah, go on. These would all be an individual plant, effectively. So each one of these would be a radish. But
Oh, yeah.
at this stage, they're the most highly nutritious. I think they're as highly nutritious as they would get,
They're quite nice,
so
aren't
to
they?
speak.
Yeah, the stalks are nice. Yeah.
They're quite peppery, so
Yeah.
We'll try one. But yeah, the deal with these is you want to put a really thick layer of seeds. Usually you'd have nowhere near as many in there, but you want a nice thick cover so that you can then just chop and
I'm
put
sure
into
when
your
I was
salads.
a kid, I used to grow something similar to that on my windowsill or something. I think
Cress.
with a press.
Yeah,
that was it,
watercress.
Watercress, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really.
on a tissue.
I'm not sure. I can't remember. But I just remember having it on my windowsill.
I remember doing it with a potato at one point.
Oh, really?
Do
Yeah.
you remember those? Like you fill it.
Oh,
No, not
like
a potato.
hair glue.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fill a tights up with sawdust or something, then
You could do
press
like
it
empty
up.
eggshell, can't you? And then like grow it, and then the Chris hair,
Oh, is it?
for children. You could decorate the eggshell.
Well, still might have to try that for the kids. So,
You could have been a mum for a long time, remember?
but yeah, I'd say they're definitely worth doing, but they do use a lot of seed. That's the
Yeah.
thing. So
They must be fairly straightforward to grow though, just in a little pot.
Yeah.
That's it.